my pleasure to moderate this session this morning for Kearney's International Women's Day Forum. This is our first session in the Americas, but I know we have a global audience, which I'm very excited to have on the line. The session for today will be focused on inclusion, where we will explore what does it mean to be an ally, to build inclusive communities, and what does inclusion do for the business. We have about an hour here. We'll spend about 10 minutes doing introduction, about 40 minutes on just a bit of discussion, and then we'll have time for some Q&A towards the end. You'll see Slido come up on the side of your screen where you can submit questions, and we'll be happy to take your questions towards the end of the session for today. So let's kick off with some introductions. I'm so excited for the impressive speakers that we have on the line today. I'm going to start off with Maud. Maud, you have an extensive career with Heineken around the world, first starting in New Zealand, then to Malaysia and Singapore, and now you're in Sri Lanka as Managing Director of Heineken Lanka Limited. Thank you for joining us on your evening. And so,
welcome.
Throughout your career, you focused on growing new markets and building talent. In fact, you're even a coach now where you're empowering females in the corporate world and in the corporate sense. Can you briefly just share a few details with the audience about Heineken's commitment to DEI?
Yeah, thank you, Dominic, and good day, I say, everyone here. It's already at 7:30 p.m. in Sri Lanka. Thank you for having me. And indeed, I've been with Heineken for a long time. And after growing up in Indonesia, I ended back, originally I am from the Netherlands. I ended back in Asia. And yeah, I love this topic, inclusion. And I think if you talk about inclusion, diversity you can measure, but inclusion is something that you need to create. And how people feel about it, if they feel they belong, you can only measure afterwards, like did you do it right? In Heineken, we have put a lot of initiatives in, but I think what is very important, globally we have set up an I&D network with over 100 local ambassadors that really promote inclusion and diversity. And why is it important to also bring the local spin in? Because every culture and every country is also different. And at Heineken, we really believe in embracing that difference and creating ideas from the local community, our local people and themselves. And with that, we have now over 170 initiatives that really drive inclusion and that sense of belonging. And of course, we also have global platforms, togetherness, and women in sales, etc. But I think it starts by keeping it very close and being authentic then in what you do. And I can go on and on telling you about it, but this is the intro.
Of course.
Hopefully I'll share more later.
Thank you, Ma. Yes, we love to hear more as we get into the discussion. Let's move over to Dr. Tucker, Dr. Lauren Tucker. You've had an impressive career, over 30 years of ad agency experience, where you have transitioned into building a business focused on inclusion management. As founder and CEO of Do What Matters, you are helping clients build inclusive organizations by enabling them to go beyond the traditional diversity efforts. I'm excited for you to share more about the new way of thinking about inclusion and its true power. Can you briefly share a few details about Do What Matters' commitment to DEI?
Yes. Well, thanks again for having me on. I'm excited always to talk about this topic because this is what we do. And I think, we, after the murder of George Floyd, we really started to see a lot of what we like to call diversity theater. One of my favorite things to say is that we saw so much diversity theater on LinkedIn, we thought Netflix had bought it. And so, we realized that what we were hearing from employees and even from employers, managers, leaders of companies is that the traditional diversity practices were not having the kind of impact that customers, consumers, and employees expect. We've been seeing, things happen over the decades. Every 2 years, it seems like something happens. Then everybody does a mea culpa. Everybody focuses on, on the pipeline. There's a shortage, I think, of chief diversity officers every 2 years because there's just this kind of cyclical reckoning that seems to happen that then just fizzles out into nowhere. And I think, while, don't get me wrong, diversity first, consultants have done some very good work, raised a lot of consciousness. It's really the bottom line is, if you have diversity without inclusion, you typically hurt the very people that you're trying to help. And so what I think has been really an interesting part of our journey is realizing that there's so many cultures out there, company cultures out there that need, that are sick, that need help. And I think in part because it's the lingering impact of what we call the 20th century is the century of employee abuse. Treating talent as if they are interchangeable, cogs in a wheel, and yet we truly are driven in this century, in the 21st century, by knowledge and information and technology and service. And these are human-centered. It's even technology, yes.
Yeah.
Human-centered, talent-centered businesses where talent must be at the center of every company leader's desk. And I often ask CEOs, when I ask them what is their number one priority, and they always say growth, and I always tell them wrong. Your number one priority is talent, and to nurture talent, find the right talent for your business for the right time. And if you do that, and you have a positive, inclusive, creative, innovative culture, growth will follow. So get your lines of sight back on the focus on talent, and then you'll get what you're looking for.
Exactly. Well, we're going to dig into that some more in this discussion. So thank you, Lauren. Let me introduce our last speaker on the panel for today. So Bill Gunn, we're excited to have you here today, hailing from New Jersey, or East Coast, I should say. You are currently the Chief Procurement Officer in the consumer health business at Johnson & Johnson, but your career started years ago in a state that I love, Tennessee, working for a major logistics company. Your career is taking you across industries, leading multi-billion-dollar businesses. And through your experiences, you have embodied the role of an ally. We look forward to hearing more from you. Similar to Maud and Lauren, can you share a bit more about Johnson & Johnson's commitments to DEI and how it's in their fabric?
So thank you, Dominique, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's great to be with everyone, and I'm so excited to be here today for the launch of the week-long forum anchored in the celebration of tomorrow's International Women's Day. I think that by sharing our experiences and our stories and what we as individuals and organizations are doing to drive diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's really important to make sure that we collectively move forward. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are part of the fabric of Johnson & Johnson. To succeed, to grow, to innovate, we need to understand the diversity of the patients, of the consumers, of the customers we serve. And we're making a great deal of efforts to enhance our workplace culture so all of our employees can be themselves and perform at their best. Because we know that bringing our diverse backgrounds, our diverse cultures, our diverse perspectives together is the way to solve today's complex healthcare problems. And this belief is grounded in our credo, which was introduced in 1943. Our credo is our moral code. It challenges us to put people first, no matter what. In 2018, we celebrated the 75th anniversary of our credo, and we introduced some enhancements to the text for the first time in 3 decades. And this update was made to focus on the importance of diversity and inclusion. Our credo now states we seek to promote and foster an inclusive, diverse workplace where individuality is celebrated and every person feels that they belong. And these changes were inspired by feedback from employees around the world. They reflected the needs of a changing world, a new generation of employees. They underscore our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they solidify our commitment to the health of humanity. Last year, we published our second Diversity and Inclusion Impact Report, where we kind of highlighted the three focus areas of our D&I strategy, which were advancing our culture of inclusion and innovation, building a diverse workforce for the future, and enhancing business performance and reputation. And so this responsibility, while it's outlined in our credo, it really guides us to believe that we need to do more. And it means we can do some bold things. We recently celebrated the first anniversary of our Race to Health Equity that aims to eliminate health inequities for people of color. And as part of this, the company's committed $100 million over the next 5 years to invest in and promote health equity solutions. And the platform is grounded in a bold aspiration, which is to help eradicate racial and social injustice as a public health threat by eliminating health inequities for people of color. And this reflects who we are as the world's largest and most broadly based healthcare company. We're working to ensure that good health is within reach of everyone. We're also really proud of our partnerships with women business advocacy groups such as WeBank and some of the progress we've made in building and growing women-owned businesses around the world. In 2021, we celebrated our 6th year of platinum recognition with WeBank. And we partner closely with the healthcare and the CPG groups as well to help development sessions for suppliers and best practices sharing with corporate members. We also support We Connect at the enterprise level, as well as many of the country chapters around the world. And we have our women to women mentoring program really provides opportunities for leaders of women-owned businesses to leverage the insights of J&J leaders to really help continue to grow businesses. So, as our chairman Alex Gorski says, we're not satisfied.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. And for me, it cut out just a bit at the very end where you were saying what your CEO says. So can you just repeat that slightly?
Sure. Apologies. So as our chairman, Alex Gorski says, we are pleased with our progress, but we are not satisfied.
Absolutely. Gotcha. Yes. So let's dig into this topic a bit more, the power of inclusion and how we can harness that across marginalized communities, but specifically for women. So the standard is to say diversity and inclusion, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even accessibility now is being added. The D is always leading though. But some institutions have started to say inclusion and diversity, or even name their head of DEI as inclusion and belonging. This is because assembling a group of diverse individuals doesn't just work on its own. The power in diversity comes from inclusion, diverse talents working and thinking together, and making sure that everyone can contribute. So allyship is a key role in bringing this power out. In fact, it's one of the easiest places to start. And so let's start with describing, how would you describe the role of an ally? Maud, can you kick us off there?
Yeah, and I want to link it, of course, also a bit to Heineken, because at Heineken we say our purpose is we brew the joy of true togetherness to inspire a better world, and that means you need to walk the talk as a company. But to your question, what does it mean then? At first, important, what is a good ally? And in my eyes, an ally is humble, is curious, but also courageous. And then it is like, okay, sit back and be an ally and wait till the people come to you. No, you need to actively promote, actively aspire to advance the culture of inclusion through intentional, positive, conscious efforts, I think, that can benefit people as a whole. So it is also not a one-off, like, I have done my mentor conversation and then, okay, done. No, it is it is active, it is continuous, it is the process of building relationships, because in an ally partnership relationship, trust and consistency, also accountability with the individuals are super important. And also for me, I learn a lot also about myself whilst I build the confidence in others. So, and it is important, I think, that the allyship should not be self-defined, like what makes me a good ally. I think it is also important that my work, my efforts, or the efforts that we do in Heineken as an ally, they must of course be recognized by those who seek your allyship. And on the other hand, like the partner should also be indeed self-aware, then trusting, and seek for support that the ally can help. And everyone can be an ally, and such. So I think it's intersectional. So
thank you, Maud. And let's just build on that point. It is intersectional. And Bill, would love to get your point of view on understanding understanding the intersectionality of our colleagues, our employees, our clients is key to understanding inclusion and really being able to be that true ally. Can you kind of discuss that a bit more, how allies need to embrace intersectionality?
Absolutely, and thanks for the question, Dominique. It's a great question. So I'll start on this from a little bit of a personal level. So as I've moved through my own life's journey, it's increasingly important to me to be an out gay male in all areas of my life, including here at J&J. And I believe that the more people who see me out as a proud gay male, who see me at work in the community, who see me in a leadership role and sharing my journey, being my authentic self, I think that can help enable, encourage, empower others around us to be able to do the same at the time that's right for each person's individual journey. And I can tell you, Dominique, that allies have been an incredible part of my own journey, both personally and professionally. Last year, during Pride, I shared a story on LinkedIn of the importance of allies and allyship, and how they've helped me from being guarded about myself and my professional and personal life to being able to have a conversation like this today. Allies have helped me feel proud on who I am and help me be a better ally to other groups, other underrepresented groups. And I think as you mentioned in the beginning, I do have the privilege of serving as the enterprise co-chair of Open and Out, which is our LGBTQ plus ERG here at Johnson & Johnson. And our 12 ERGs at J&J each play a critical role in building community and intersectionality. I think increasingly the ERGs are identifying opportunities to partner together to build intersectionality. And a couple of examples. In October of 2020, Open and Out held our first Ally Week, which was really to build awareness and championship for our LGBTQ plus community. And last year we repeated this event, but with a focus on intersectionality. And during that week, we had over 1,500 people watch our events live with a highlight from leaders from our business sectors who shared programs on how they're building allyship and intersectionality. So for instance, we have a program, Allies with the Black Community. It's a monthly series from the Consumer Health that's in partnership with our African Ancestry Leadership Council, with our WLI Women's Leadership Initiative, with OLI, our Hispanic and Latino Organization for Leadership and Advancement, with ADA, our Alliance for Diverse Abilities, with our South Asian Professional Network Association. And next week, we're hosting a dialogue with Venus Williams to share about her work as a champion for gender equity. So I think we're increasingly leveraging the collective power of the ERGs to help on these conversations on intersectionality. At the same time, externally, J&J has been leading an initiative to increase the diversity and equity and inclusion of the advertising industry, especially for people of color. DE&I has been part of our supplier top to tops for many years, but as the conversations about social and racial justice accelerated following the murder of George Floyd in 2020, J&J signed, along with other organizations, the ANA and AIM commitment to equality, inclusion, and systematic change. And we understand that as a major buyer of advertising in the US and around the world, we have a responsibility to ensure that not only are we showing our commitment to diversity to our consumers, but also showing that commitment in how we do business. So as part of that initiative, we've asked 3 of our agency holding company partners, IPG, WPP, and Omnicom, and our global media partners, Google, Facebook, Amazon, to join us in really what's an unprecedented collaboration for some firms who are normally really strong competitors, but united around a common cause. And so we asked these partners to adopt micro charters, which we co-created, to support our overall company DE&I framework. And those are aligned against specific objectives along building the diversity in our agency teams, along accelerating supplier diversity to increase the diversity behind the camera, increasing the development of our multicultural content, and then integrating more robust tools to measure and track and optimize those initiatives. So we're incredibly proud of the partnership and the results. We've conducted supplier diversity training. We partnered to sponsor case competitions at HBCUs. We've collaborated with Facebook and Coursera for a program to support diverse learners starting their careers in marketing. We created and executed a culturally inclusive and relevant agency week to inspire brand teams to create bigger, bolder ideas. And it's been really strong in the further utilization of our diverse suppliers. And then, these monthly collaboration meetings continue. They've been going on for almost 2 years with incredible sponsorship and partnership. So we know that collectively we will make a difference, and the intersectionality is a key part of that.
Dominique, I'm just going to jump in. You know me, I'm straight no chaser. And I think, the things that Bill has said is really great to hear. Having been a long-term employee of IPG, I'm glad to see that they are part of this. I think where, we need to consider intersectionality, and really, I'm not sure how I feel about that term sometimes, but I do talk a lot about the complexity of human experience, right? We can, it's always interesting kind of, in these video conference calls, et cetera, is that it is so flat, right? It literally is flat. We don't see the actual person. And I think a lot of times what happens in real life is that we don't see the 3D of people, right?
Yeah.
We don't see the complexity of their experiences and how we need to accommodate that complexity in order to sponsor and champion their career paths. So while we have done a lot of great work and I really applaud Johnson & Johnson. I've often talked to, we have agency clients, we also have marketers. And I've said to our marketing clients, you have a tremendous amount of power to change the advertising industry. When you do agency reviews, you need to make sure, there are many times when I would show up to an agency review, I'd be not only the only woman, but the only person of color on the team. And I'd be looking across at my clients, potential clients, and they have a tremendously diverse team, and yet they hired us anyway, right? To me, that should be a criteria, right? I would have hated to have lost the business, but it would have made a point that I think would have motivated agencies to become much more diverse and much more inclusive years ago. I also think, though, that the real issue is this idea of recognizing the complexity of human experience to get people into executive leadership positions and on boards. We continue to ignore the fact that board membership is just scandalously white and male. And the reasons for that are myriad, but I will say one driver, and I've actually collected a list of people of color, LGBTQ folks on a list of people that I think would make great board members. And of course, the argument is always, well, but they don't have board membership experience.
Right.
So you're caught in this hydraulic, and no offense to anybody out there, but this isn't, being a board member is not brain surgery. Reading a profit and loss statement, understanding this, we're not talking about neuroscience here, unless we are talking about neuroscience, and then they'll have to decide the board membership they need, right? But the bottom line is this idea that somehow you have to have this track record of being on a board. You know, somebody told me the other day that they were not ever asked to be on a board until they took their millions of dollars and invested in a company so they could be on a board in order to get board experience. What? That's just crazy. And so to me, I think we need to really start focusing on where championship needs to be. Allyship is great because you're a team member, you're in the game, you're part of helping me win. But a champion gets in the game and really helps me win, right? We have to move beyond cheerleaders, right? And champions get in the game and help you win. And we need more championship of women and people of color to be in the C-suites. We need more champions for people of color and women to be on these boards. Because I can tell you this, I've never gotten called. I've got tons of amazing BIPOC talent and LGBTQ talent. They've never gotten called. And so to me, something is awry at that kind of, you know, people talk about the pipeline, right? Well, the pipeline's broken in the middle. And I don't want to hear any more about filling the pipeline until we are fixing the pipeline in the middle, and we are sponsoring and we are championing people to get into the C-suite and to get into those boardrooms. Because if we don't do that, then all this furious activity we're doing right now isn't going to have the impact that we desire to see. And I'm passionate about this because, quite frankly, I'm tired of being asked for, you know, well, Lauren, do you have any people? Well, yeah, I do. They've never been on a board before, but they've run companies. They've been, you know, executives, and they know what they're doing. And we need to put them on those boards.
Yeah, I think, Lauren, I love what you're saying, like filling the pipeline in the middle. And in the Netherlands, there's currently also this discussion going on, like, you know, what is talent? Who judges about talent? Who decides who is good or not? And usually, who decides the talent criteria are probably still a lot of white men, and they look at in certain aspects, like, have you ever been on a board, for example, but also for middle management, have you done this, did you go to this university, etc., etc. Whilst if you look at people who haven't had that fix but still are at that level of middle management, probably had to overcome many more adversities, so have values, have behaviors that technically could bring so much more to the table and really create that diverse aspect, not only in, you know, race, ethnicity, but also all the adversities you have had to overcome, courage. So yes, I think, and we at Heineken also do that, you know, continuously improve the gender balance of senior managers, but in also looking at, hey, what is talent, what are behaviors, what do people really bring to the table, and really value that diversity, be daring to ourselves to set those targets, set those commitments, but also be caring and really connect, like, hey, all those white men, maybe adding some diversity to the table brings better talent for the future to the top.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Bill. Yes, I was
just building on that. We have a we're sponsored with Leadership, which actually one of the focuses of leadership is building the LGBTQ plus diversity in boards, and how do we identify and develop and prepare. And so I think that fits right in with what we're talking about here.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome. And I know with Kearney, we have a board ready program where we are trying to help continue to build that pipeline. But I want to get back into this even more specifically, because we talked a bit about allyship, and we're trying to get into what's the power of inclusion and how do you harness that power. And Lauren, you mentioned, well, you have to champion, so you have to get in the game. And so can we talk a bit more about that? What are some actions that people can take? What does it mean to really build that inclusive environment? And specifically, I'm going to say for women.
Well, I think one of the things, we do is we really talk to our clients about changing processes and systems. So we tend to not do a whole lot of individual consciousness raising around trying to, we don't talk about white fragility and white supremacy and that kind of a thing. What we talk about are operational inefficiencies that foster bias and exclusion. And you would be surprised as to where that impacts people. We've been, dealing with some contract negotiations where we're dealing with a very large company. We're a small, female-owned, minority-owned business that has to pay for legal counsel to help negotiate contracts. So going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, it's costing me money, whereas it's, with a big company, right, can afford that, right? Because they're dealing, with their own operational inefficiencies in terms of how they process that it is hurting us as a small business financially, right? So these are the kinds of things I really want people to realize, that when you are thinking about allyship and championship, this is not about just visible differences. This is not about targeted differences. Oh, let's make sure Lauren's included. This is about looking at your organization and seeing what kinds of barriers that have been set up to that whether intentional or not foster bias and exclusion, and the willingness to rewire those. The willingness to say, just because we're rewiring these processes doesn't mean that, some people are going to be left out and others are, that we're going to have this kind of zero-sum game here. But we have to be willing to interrogate with humility the processes that have been put into place that we've never questioned, and yet have consistently resulted in bias and exclusion, and typically favored cronyism, right? Cronyism is really some of the most insidious things that create bias and exclusion. So for me, it's about looking at those processes and making sure that they aren't setting up ghost rules and barriers and moving goalposts. And allies need to help to bring that to the surface and convince the leadership of companies to really rethink what have been systems and processes that have generally favored white men.
Yeah. And Maud, you've been in global leadership roles, right? You've been growing talent in Asian markets. And so building on this point from Lauren, systems and processes need to change to really start to build those inclusive environments. From your experiences, what would you add to that? Like, how have you seen that kind of manifest in the local markets that you've been able to work in? And then Bill, I'll turn the question over to you after Maud.
Yeah, and I mentioned it at the beginning as well. There is a local spin on it. And in Asia, we also have a program called Boost. So Boost our own Asian talent to really get more Asian talent to the top. And if you look versus men versus women, women make decisions on their career also much sooner than men. Yeah, it's true. So at a certain point, they say, okay, am I going for that career, or am I gonna start the family? So in Heineken, I think also if you look at in our inclusion and diversity strategy and our ambition to brew that better world, you need to walk the talk. So indeed set gender balance targets, commit to equal pay. We are also indeed continuously stimulating that conversation, and there's the Women Interactive Network program, where people can really connect and also share what they are facing, and also learn from other cultures how they have overcome some of the adversities. And with the just launched togetherness program that I spoke about, we are really connecting OPCOs. So not only just local, but also bringing, and we have a lot of OPCOs that face similar issues, similar challenges, and the people in those OPCOs, it depends on local culture as well. When you say, hey, if I am in Sri Lanka, yes, this is what I'm facing, and I can say it here in this forum, but there is, for example, legislation that prevents women entering certain roles in alcohol. So what I commit myself to, and I am here as a woman leading in alcohol, of course you have to abide by the laws and local context and regulations. You have to respect that, but you can put a spin on it and say, okay, in supply chain, indeed, what roles can women do? Break the stereotypes. To say, globally, we have the Women in Sales Network. That is so inspiring when people see women promoted in sales. And just to point it, our global sales director for the Heineken company is one of my good friends from Asia that has been working in Asia, is a woman. So connecting, breaking the bias, opening up the conversation, whilst also setting very clear targets on equal pay and just the percentages in there.
Thank you, Maud. Bill, how would you build on that from a J&J perspective in terms of systems and processes that you may have been able to lead in altering, or that you've seen the organization change in order to be more inclusive, and particularly of women?
So I think that just building on what Lauren and Maud said, I think some of the elements about visibility, about management accountability, about making sure that we have visibility to representation and clear, development plans, and being able to track against those. I think that going back to one of my other beginning comments is we have incredibly two active organizations within the company, WLI, Women's Leadership Initiative, and then YSTEM 2D, that have really strong programs, both on an international perspective and on a global perspective, to help with the development of women and the help and help in the career path and the championship and in the advocacy as well. We also have sponsorship and championship programs as well. And I think even within our own procurement team, we have a procurement WLI, which really can be even more narrowly focused within our procurement organization. So, tremendous focus on us, and again, it's consistent with the culture of the company. Our credo holds us, accountable for it, and it goes back to the fact that through diversity, we know that's how we're going to solve complex healthcare challenges.
Excellent. We've been having such a powerful conversation so far, starting with the foundation of what does it mean to be an ally, and having that courage to be an ally, to actually, well, how do you champion others, and what does that mean to change systems and processes? Bill, you kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but this also has business implications. And Lauren, you even mentioned it as well. Well, it's not just about growth, but if you're focusing on your talent, the implications for your business, the implications for your company, and then eventually the community are powerful. And so, Bill, you slightly have mentioned a couple of programs, but I'd love to hear a bit more, and then Lauren, Maud as well. And as we go through this last question, I'll just say to the audience, where we have over 100 people on the line, we're going to open it up to questions. So please submit your questions in the chat after we get through the last question here. I'd like to open the discussion. So Bill, particularly, how are we seeing inclusion to grow businesses and then even impact the community?
So thanks, Dominique. It's a really exciting topic and question for us. So the LGBTQ plus community faces a lot of unique healthcare needs and inequities, and there is no clear private sector champion to address them. The LGBTQ plus community, it's a fast growing demographic, outsized purchasing power, estimated at about $9 trillion globally in categories that extend, beyond those where just the community might have unique needs. So J&J has business segments that overlap with the LGBTQ plus healthcare needs and disparities, and our continued push for health equity and to improve the health of humanity. There are meaningful ways that we can both deliver business value and address inequities of this population. So we realized that in addition to supporting our internal LGBTQ plus community through Open and Out, we had an opportunity to leverage the incredible talent, the skills, the experiences, and the passion of our members to drive better business outcomes. So we launched this past year Open and Out Labs, which is an internal think tank that serves as an innovation hub and a resource that supports our businesses in championing the healthcare needs of the LGBTQ plus community. So Open and Out has 5,000 plus members across 100 global chapters, comprised of business and commercial leaders, marketers, scientists, and others who have the professional capability and the personal passion to advocate the LGBTQ plus targeted positioning and business objectives. And so Open Out Labs is driven by volunteers. It's embedded as an initiative within our existing ERG. And we currently have 5 initiatives underway with really strong engagement from our business leaders. And so I think from the perspective of intersectionality, we know that there are unique inequities and unmet healthcare needs experienced by LGBTQ plus people of color in the US and around the world. And so Open and Out Labs has an ideation team that's exploring ways that we might partner internally with J&J with our own race to health equity that I talked about a little bit earlier, and then engaging at the same time with business leaders to address the unique health inequities that are experienced by LGBTQ plus people of color, beginning with the Black LGBTQ communities in the US. And so we're incredibly excited about the ability to expand the role of ERGs to really drive better health and better business outcomes.
Thank you for sharing that story, Bill. And it's wonderful to hear what you're being able to do in the community. Before I open it to the first question that we've gotten, Maude, Lauren, is there anything that you want to add into that in terms of inclusion going beyond the 4 walls and into the community?
I will just agree with Bill. I think one of the things that we run into when we are consulting with our clients is really getting, especially after some of the traumatic things that have happened, where I think people are, and we understand that, using ERGs for support and mutual support and, trying to navigate some of the emotional trauma that comes out of some of the things that we're seeing out in the world, but it's still about the business. And I really liked what Bill said. It's about, improving business outcomes. And that's the role that ERGs, or some people will call them business resource groups, should keep in their, at the top of mind, is that we must be able to connect the dots between what they're doing and the business outcomes for the organization, because we don't want to give leaders of companies excuses. Right? Excuses to say, well, this is a nice to have, this is but it's not really helping my business. So to make sure that they understand that there are great ideas and creativity coming out of these groups that are there to bring new perspectives and new audiences, new consumer bases to the company, we'll make sure that leaders have those ERGs as real resource groups for business decisions.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
I agree with that, Lauren. Indeed, business results, but also indeed climate survey. That you need to know where you are as a base. So that is your zero measuring moment, and then you get an outcome, and don't be offended by the outcome. No, take it as an opportunity, and then really create those action plans and continue to measure, because diversity you can measure, but the inclusion is, as I said at the start, it is an output. And Dominique, to your question also on how do you go beyond the four walls of the business, also by, as an organization, not only setting up indeed those internal work groups, but also, for example, Heineken signed to the UN Women Empowerment Principles. And you might say, okay, you sign up because we really believe in that and stand by it. But then when you also activate it, we had a campaign, Orange the World, that was all about elimination of violence against women. And in a local market like Sri Lanka, that was again so important to bring that to the table. And then if I put that banner up and then that the people in my team see that and they proudly stand and lobby with you. So it is, yeah, walking that talk, leading by example, and localizing what is globally happening and bringing that back in as well. And the same, yeah, Heineken, we are all about sports sponsorships, but then not only sponsor the UEFA men, but also the women's football, and then how to bring that back to life again. So there's so much we can do, and you constantly feel, are we doing enough?
Yeah.
I think already these forums are so great, and I got inspired by by both of you as well and what you say. So thank you.
Maud, I love that, localizing what's happening globally. That's very powerful. And so this has been just a fabulous discussion thus far. We've gotten a few questions in the chat. And one of the questions is particularly around a story about allyship, a powerful story you can maybe speak to, how allyship that has inspired you as it pertains to action that an ally has taken and the impact. And particularly, is it a story of you being an ally to someone or someone being an ally to yourself? And as you think about this for a second, you know, I also saw earlier in the chat, someone mentioned there's no ceiling at their company right now. It's more about how they need to be more assertive. And I think that's an interesting statement. And I would love to kind of explore that a bit more, the courage it may take to be an ally, to step forward and to walk the talk. So from our speakers, do you have a powerful allyship story you would like to share?
Sure.
Bill,
I
Bill, I think on mute, I think.
Hey, does anybody? I have. I'm happy to jump in with one, but unless anybody else would like to go first.
No, go ahead, Bill. Take it away.
So, you know, as I was talking out a little bit at the beginning of the conversation about, you know, being a proud gay male and the role that allies have had with that. So when I entered the workplace, it was a very different time. You know, I worked carefully to guard my identity. I had my own issues with acceptance, and only a handful of people knew I was gay. And over time, I found sort of being one person at work and another outside of work was really very stressful. And so for many years, I was careful to keep my personal and my professional life separate, you know, for fear of not being accepted, or there would have been limitations in terms of career. But I had the opportunity to work with a very senior leader in a previous role at a large organization, Dennis, and was someone who I had a great deal of respect for. I looked up to, I admired, and had been a great mentor and a guiding force in my career. And through the years, as we developed a closer relationship, I always wanted to find a way to tell him that I was gay. But given sort of the environment I grew up with, it wasn't as welcoming. I always struggled with how to do that. And so on a trip many years ago during a casual conversation, you know, I found the way, the courage, I guess, to share, you know, what was such a big secret, and yet at the same time, something that would be so liberating for me. And I told Dennis I was gay, and honestly apprehensive about the reaction. And so for the next, you know, probably hour plus, we talked about my journey as a gay man, the challenges, most importantly, how he could help to support me, you know, where can I help you? And he always did, as a champion. And so, you know, I think that pivotal moment was really true allyship, but it really helped enable me to be sitting here having that conversation today.
Excellent story. And it sounds like he created an environment, a safe space for you to be open and to be vulnerable and transparent. But then even taking a step further to listen and seek to understand what is needed to support you. What are those actions that can be helpful? And I think that that's definitely a powerful story, because sometimes you're not always heard, I would say, in terms of, well, what can really help you in your journey. So allies taking a moment to understand. Excellent.
And it's inspired me at the opportunity or responsibility I have to do the same for
For
others.
others.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I know we have a few minutes left in this session, and we've talked a couple times about ERGs. I know all of your organizations, including Kearney, has multiple ERGs, and it's, I would say from my experiences, ERGs are just I would say very hard to make successful. And I liked how earlier in the conversation we talked about tying business outcomes to what ERGs are doing. And so we have a question here in the chat in terms of an ally taking a meaningful role in an ERG, because it's not necessarily the responsibility of women to run everything for the women's ERG, right? Is there an example any of you may want to share in terms of what's an ally's role in an ERG, and also making the ERG connected to the business?
I think one of the things that we've recommended, and I think this is really critical, is for the leaders of the ERGs to get together and form, an advisory council to the leadership. And it really requires that the leadership understand, again, relationship is a two-way street, not a highway and a bike path, right? So leadership has to actually, listen, hear what's happening. These are folks that typically have their fingers on the pulse of what's happening with across the board to all employees. And let me be clear on that these ERGs may be reflective of certain, what we know as targeted differences. But what we have to really understand is that this is also where the voice of all employees tend to be filtered through, right? And, we have to be very, inclusion is one of those things where we have to be careful that we don't have people who are in quote unquote the targeted or marginalized groups be kind of isolated as the problem to be solved, when we realize that oftentimes they are articulating things that are problematic for all employees, including white men, right? There's a McKinsey study the other day that came out about, it was seen through the lens of Black employees, saying that 67% of the Black employees in the kind of the McKinsey client pool said that they were not being sponsored, and that these sponsorship programs that all of their clients seem to do, weren't working. But when I looked at the data, I also realized that 63% of white employees were saying the same thing. So ERGs, I think, oftentimes are the early warning systems that the talent base is struggling with certain aspects of the company from an operational standpoint.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I think.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well said.
And it's an ally's role to pay attention to that, to those warning signs, right? And to be involved. I know we just have a few minutes left, and Lauren, I know you have to drop for another commitment, so I just want to thank you and allow you to drop. But thank you so much for your insights and your perspectives during this time.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate being invited. Bye-bye.
Right. Bill and Maude, as we wrap up here, do you have any final thoughts? We've really hit this spectrum here in terms of the power of inclusion, and how the power starts with being an ally, but then not only being an ally, but championing it by doing something, changing systems, changing processes, and then harnessing that to impact business outcomes. And so do you have any final thoughts for the audience here on what they need to do to start harnessing that power?
Yeah, maybe a nice also a personal example, because I love the powerful allyship story. But I moved to Sri Lanka in June, and for a long time, Heineken Lanka was a relatively local company, and then hey, there was this blonde woman going to lead the organization, and not only are we going through a strategic goal shift, but we are also going through a cultural change. And Heineken has launched a new global strategy, you know, brewing the joy of true togetherness, inspire a better world. And with that, there are also behaviors. And that is passion, it is care, it's enjoyment, and it is courage. So what is so important is that I walk the talk, but that I also bring to life what that international purpose means, but also how you do that. And last week we had our annual conference and we celebrated the annual awards, etc. And then there was a band and we were dancing, and they said, "Oh, you dance?" And they said, "Oh, you're actually not scary. We thought a CEO was always scary. No, we can talk to you." And then I'm like, almost like, yes, then I know I'm doing it right. And they start talking, and we create that trust and that authenticity, because that is my role as an ally here to the OPCO, to create that courage in people. Because if people don't raise their hand and speak up, then I can make all the plans that I need, but probably I will be going in the wrong direction. So also that will create the wrong business results. So winning that trust is so powerful, and that gives me the most pleasure. So allyships and partnerships can also be very fulfilling and fun, and I think you would agree with me, Bill.
I love to dance too, so I agree. Go ahead, Bill.
Definitely.
Bill, we have a couple minutes here, so before I wrap up this session, any final thoughts you would add on to that?
Yeah, I would just say, I read something a few years ago. Allyship is a journey, and it doesn't matter where you are on the journey, but just everybody needs to be on the journey, and it starts with curiosity. It starts with asking questions. It starts with learning. It starts with challenging the way you think, and it goes all the way up to to much more even stronger levels of allyship or advocacy. So I think allyship is a journey. Everybody needs to be on the allyship journey, and so long as you're moving along it, that's how we move forward. And I think that's what this session's all about.
Well, Maude and Bill, thank you so much for your time. I commend you and your organizations for what you're doing in your communities and with your employees and your clients. I think through this conversation, we have proven that there is power in inclusion, and 1 + 1 does equal 3. Well, we've had over 100 people on the call today. I want to encourage everyone to continue to attend our events this week. We have an event this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern in the U.S., Women in a New Era of Work. It'll be a very exciting session. Again, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Maude. Have a great day and evening, everyone.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.